Captain Jake Morrison walked slowly across the bridge of the UES Liberty. The ship was huge, almost 2 kilometers long, and it carried the best crew humanity had ever put together for deep space exploration. Jake had been in space for 15 years, but he still felt amazed every time he looked out at the endless stars through the main viewing window. The Liberty was 3 months into its mission to explore the outer regions of human space. They had discovered 2 new planets that might support life and mapped 17 star systems that no human had ever seen before. It was quiet work, but Jake loved it. Space was peaceful out here, far from Earth and the busy shipping lanes. Lisa Parker sat at the communications station, her headphones on as she listened to the usual background noise of space. Radio waves from distant stars, electromagnetic pulses from solar flares, and the occasional automated beacon from human outposts. She had been doing this job for 8 years and knew every type of signal by heart. That's why she almost jumped out of her chair when something completely new came through her equipment. "Captain," Lisa called out, her voice tight with excitement and confusion. "I'm getting something strange here. This isn't like anything in our databases." Jake turned away from the window and walked over to her station. "Chief Science Officer." Danny Rodriguez also moved closer, his curiosity clearly visible on his face. Danny was a brilliant man who had studied alien theories for most of his life, even though humans had never actually met any aliens before. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked. Lisa pressed a few buttons and the sound filled the bridge. It was definitely artificial, not natural space noise. The signal had a pattern, repeating sections that sounded almost like music, but not quite. There were high tones and low tones, fast sections and slow sections. It was beautiful in a strange way, but also somehow desperate. "It's coming from the Kepler 442 system," Lisa said, checking her instruments. "That's about 12 light years from here. And Captain, I think this might be a distress call." Danny's eyes went wide. "Are you sure? How can you tell?" Lisa pointed to her screen, where wave patterns moved up and down like a heartbeat. "Look at these mathematical sequences. They're using prime numbers in a specific pattern. That's a universal sign of intelligence. And see how they repeat the same sequence every 30 seconds. That's exactly how we would send an emergency signal if we wanted someone to notice it." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. In all of human history, they had never received a signal from another intelligent species. Scientists had always wondered if humans were alone in the universe. Now, it seemed like they were about to get their answer. "Can you decode any of it?" Jake asked. Danny was already working on another computer, running the signal through every translation program. The ship had. "Give me a few minutes," he said, his fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. Commander Amy Foster, the ship's tactical officer, joined them at the communications station. Amy was a former military pilot who had fought in the Mars Rebellion 10 years earlier. She was tough, smart, and always thought about potential dangers before anyone else did. "Captain, if this really is an alien distress call, we need to be very careful," Amy said quietly. "We don't know anything about these beings. They could be hostile. They could be trying to lure ships into a trap." Jake nodded. Amy was right too. Be cautious. But something about the signal felt genuine to him. The mathematical patterns were too complex and too perfect to be some kind of trick. And the way the signal repeated with slight variations suggested real desperation, not a clever trap. Danny suddenly looked up from his computer, his face pale. "Captain, I've managed to decode parts of it. This is definitely a distress call. And it's not just from one species. There are at least 3 different language patterns in here, all saying basically the same thing. What are they saying?" Jake asked. Danny swallowed hard before answering. "They're under attack by something they call the swarm, according to this translation. These creatures are living ships that eat other ships and grow bigger. The aliens say they've already lost 3 entire star systems and millions of lives. They're asking for any help from any species that receives their message." The bridge became very quiet. Jake could hear the soft humming of the ship's engines and the quiet beeping of various instruments. Everyone was thinking the same thing. If this was real, then humanity had just learned that they were not alone in the universe. But they had also learned that there was something out there that was destroying entire civilizations. Lisa's voice broke the silence. Captain, the signal is getting weaker. I think their transmitter might be damaged, or maybe they're running out of power. Jake made a decision that would change human history forever. Lisa, send a response. Tell them that we received their message and that help is coming. Amy looked worried. Sir, shouldn't we contact Earth Command first? This is way beyond our mission parameters. We will contact Earth, Jake said firmly. But those beings are dying right now. If we wait for orders from Earth, it might be too late. Lisa, send the message. Lisa's hands shook slightly as she typed the response. It was a simple message in mathematical language that any intelligent species should be able to understand. It basically said, message received, help coming, hold on. After she sent it, Jake called his senior officers together. Danny, I want you to analyze everything we know about this swarm. Figure out what kind of weapons might work against living ships. Amy, start planning tactical options. We don't know what we're going up against, but we need to be ready for anything. While his crew worked, Jake went to his private office and opened a secure communication channel to Earth. Admiral Kevin Hayes appeared on his screen a few minutes later. Hayes was the head of Earth's Deep Space Command and Jake's direct superior. Captain Morrison, what's your status? Hayes asked. Jake took a deep breath. Admiral, we've made contact with alien species. They're under attack and have requested assistance? Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he leaned forward in his chair. Captain, are you absolutely certain about this? Yes, sir. We have the full transmission recorded and partially decoded. There are at least 3 different alien species working together, and they're fighting something called the Swarm. Admiral, they're losing badly. They've already lost 3 star systems. Hayes rubbed his forehead, clearly thinking hard. Captain, this changes everything. If these aliens are as advanced as they seem, and they can't stop this swarm, what makes you think we can help? Jake had been thinking about the same question. Sir, maybe we can't, but we have to try. If we don't help them, and the swarm keeps growing, eventually it might come for us too. Better to fight it now, with allies, than wait for it to arrive at Earth. Hayes nodded slowly. You're right, Captain. I'm authorizing a full military response. The 3rd Fleet will rendezvous with you in 6 hours. Admiral Tony Martinez will take command of the operation. Jake felt a mixture of relief and terror. Relief that Earth was taking this seriously, and terror at what they might be getting into. As he ended the call with Hayes, he looked out his office window at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien beings were fighting for their lives against an enemy that consumed entire worlds. In a few hours, humanity would join that fight. The human fleet came out of hyperspace like a pack of angry wolves. Admiral Tony Martinez stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UES Defiance, and stared at the scene in front of him. He had fought in many battles during his 30 years in space, but nothing had prepared him for this. The alien fleet was scattered across a huge area of space, near a bright yellow star. Some ships were obviously damaged, with pieces floating away from them in slow motion. Other ships were completely destroyed, nothing left but glowing metal chunks drifting in the darkness. In the distance, Martinez could see strange black shapes, moving between the alien vessels like sharks hunting fish. My God, whispered Commander Steve Peterson, who stood beside the Admiral. What are those things? The black shapes were enormous, each one easily 10 kilometers long. They moved in ways that no normal spaceship should move, bending and twisting like living creatures. Their surfaces seemed to pulse and shift as if they were breathing. Dark energy crackled along their hulls like lightning during a thunderstorm. Communications. Officer Lisa Parker's voice came through the fleet communication system. Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. They're trying to contact us. Put it through, Martinez ordered. The main screen flickered and then showed the face of something that was definitely not human. The alien had crystal-like skin that sparkled blue and green, and eyes that glowed with soft white light. When it spoke, the computer translated its words into English. Unknown ships, this is Admiral Kethver of the Zephyrian Defense Force. We are grateful that you answered our call for help, but you must leave this place immediately. The swarm will destroy your vessels just as they have destroyed ours. Your courage honors you, but courage alone cannot stop these creatures. Martinez stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. Admiral Kethver, this is Admiral Tony Martinez of the human fleet. We came here to help, and we're not leaving until this fight is finished. The alien's glowing eyes seemed to grow wider. Human? We have no records of your species in our databases. You are unknown to the Galactic Council. How did you travel so far from your home system? We can discuss that later, Martinez said firmly. Right now, tell me about these swarm creatures. What are their weaknesses? Another alien face appeared on the screen beside Kethver. This one looked completely different, with blue skin covered in scales and large black eyes like a deep-sea fish. I am Admiral Coral of the Nerian Navy, the new alien said. Humans, you do not understand. The swarm adapts to all weapons. We have used plasma cannons, energy beams, particle weapons, and quantum disruptors. Nothing works for very long. They learn from each attack and become immune to it. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos, who was monitoring the tactical displays on the bridge, suddenly called out a warning. Admiral, multiple swarm entities are changing course. They're moving toward our fleet. Martinez looked at his tactical screen and counted at least 20 of the massive black creatures turning in their direction. They move faster than anything that size should be able to move, accelerating smoothly through space like giant space whales. All ships, this is Admiral Martinez, he announced to the entire human fleet. We're about to find out what these things can do. Remember your training and stick to the plan. Deploy kinetic weapons on my command. The alien admirals on the screen looked confused. Kinetic weapons? Admiral Kethver asked. You mean solid projectiles? That is a very primitive approach. Such weapons cannot penetrate modern defensive shields. Martinez smiled grimly. Admiral, you're about to learn something about humans. We come from what you would probably call a death world. We've been fighting and killing each other for thousands of years, and we've gotten very good at it. The first swarm creature reached weapons range and immediately fired some kind of dark energy beam at the human fleet. The beam struck the shields of the U's resilience, and the ship shook but held together. Captain Hellenberg's voice came through the communication system. Shields holding at 80%. That thing packs a punch, but our defenses can handle it. All ships, Martinez commanded. Open fire. What happened next shocked every alien in the battle zone. Instead of energy weapons, the human ships fired massive chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Railguns mounted along the hulls of each human vessel launched tungsten projectiles that moved at a significant fraction of light speed. The swarm creatures had no defense against solid matter traveling that fast. The tungsten rounds punched through their organic armor like bullets through paper. Black fluid sprayed out of the wounds, and the creatures writhed in obvious pain. Impossible, Admiral Coral whispered, staring at her sensors. The swarm's adaptive armor should have stopped those projectiles. Commander Steve Peterson, coordinating the attack from the UES Defiance, watched his tactical display with satisfaction. You can't adapt to physics, he said. A chunk of metal moving at 20% light speed will punch through anything. But the swarm was learning quickly. The creatures began moving in unpredictable patterns, making it harder for the human gunners to target them. Some of the beings started spinning rapidly, using their momentum to deflect the tungsten rounds. Dr. Robert Clark, the fleet's chief scientist, was studying the swarm creatures through long-range sensors. Admiral, he called out excitedly, I'm detecting chemical signals between the creatures. They're communicating through pheromones, just like insects on Earth. Can we disrupt those signals? Martinez asked. Possibly. We have chemical dispersal systems on some of our ships. They were designed for terraforming projects, but they might work here. Captain Lucy Davis of the UES Vengeance volunteered her ship for the experiment. We're loaded with atmospheric processing equipment. Give me coordinates and I'll deploy everything we have. As the battle continued, the UES Vengeance moved into position and began releasing massive clouds of aerosol chemicals. The compounds were designed to break down complex organic molecules, and they worked perfectly against the swarm's communication system. Within minutes, the creatures began acting strangely. Instead of working together in coordinated attacks, they started bumping into each other and firing at random targets. Some even began attacking other swarm creatures. The alien fleets watched in amazement as the humans turned the tide of a battle that had seemed hopeless just minutes before. Admiral Kethver's voice came through the communication system again, but now it was filled with wonder instead of despair. Incredible. In less than 1 hour, you have accomplished what we could not do in months of fighting. Your species fights, like the ancient warriors of our oldest legends. Major Frank Turner led boarding parties from several human ships onto disabled swarm vessels. The humans wore heavy armor and carried weapons that fired explosive shells instead of energy beams. They moved through the organic corridors of the swarm ships like unstoppable machines, placing charges in vital areas. The aliens had tried to fight the swarm with advanced technology and careful tactics. The humans simply used brute force and overwhelming firepower. Where the aliens had tried to find elegant solutions, the humans used the simplest approach that worked. Navigation Officer Chris Baker reported that the remaining swarm creatures were retreating toward the edge of the star system. Admiral, they're running. Should we pursue? Martinez considered the question carefully. No, let them go. We've learned what we needed to learn, and our alien friends need time to recover. As the battle ended, the human fleet found itself surrounded by alien vessels. Ships from 3 different species moved closer, their crews probably as curious about the humans as the humans were about them. Admiral Kethver's face appeared on the screen again. Admiral Martinez, the Galactic Council must hear about this. Victory, your species has capabilities that we never imagined possible. The entire galaxy needs to know that the swarm can be defeated. Martinez nodded. We'll be happy to share what we know. But first, let's help your people repair their ships. We have medical supplies and engineering teams standing by. Captain Victoria Ross, serving as the fleet's diplomatic officer, began coordinating relief efforts with the alien commanders. As she worked, she realized that humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. They hadn't made first contact through peaceful exploration or careful diplomacy. Instead, they had arrived in the middle of a war and immediately changed the outcome. The age of human isolation was over, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days after the first battle, long-range sensors detected a new swarm fleet approaching the system. This time, there were more creatures than before, and they seemed different somehow. The black organic ships moved in tighter formations, and their surfaces had changed color to a dark metallic gray. Captain Helen Burke studied the sensor readings from her ship, the U's Resilience. She had been a fighter pilot before becoming a ship captain, and she understood how enemies adapted to new threats. They're learning from our last fight, she told her crew. Look at those formations. They're trying to minimize our targeting opportunities. Admiral Martinez called a meeting with all human captains and the alien commanders. The meeting took place on the UES Liberty, which had the largest conference room. When everyone gathered around the long metal table, the differences between the species became very obvious. The Zephyrian Admiral Kethver looked like he was made of living crystal, with light flowing through his translucent skin. Admiral Coral of the Nereans had to wear a special water suit that kept her fish-like body moist. The third alien, Commander Gaswalker of the Vortani, was basically a cloud of colored gas contained in a floating sphere. The swarm has returned. With greater numbers, Admiral Kethver reported. Our analysis shows they have modified their bioarmor to better resist kinetic impacts. They are adapting to your weapons. Dr. Robert Clark, who had been studying captured swarm tissue samples, looked up from his portable laboratory. That's not entirely accurate. They can't actually make their armor much thicker without slowing down significantly. What they've done is add layers that will break apart when hit, absorbing some of the impact energy. Captain Lucy Davis leaned forward in her chair. So we need bigger bullets or faster bullets? Not necessarily, Dr. Clark replied. We need different bullets. I've been working on some ideas. Admiral Martinez turned to his tactical staff. What other options do we have? Commander Steve Peterson pulled up a holographic display showing the approaching swarm fleet. Sir, I've been thinking about something. These creatures communicate through chemical signals, right? And they're living beings, not machines. That means they probably have other biological needs. Such as? Asked Admiral Coral, her large black eyes reflecting the light from the hologram. Food, water, oxygen, waste disposal, Peterson continued. They're not just weapons, they're animals. Very large, very dangerous animals, but still animals. Captain. Jake Morrison, who had remained quiet during most of the meeting, suddenly sat up straighter. Steve's right, we've been thinking about this all wrong. We're not fighting spaceships, we're hunting monsters. The alien commanders looked confused. Commander Gaswalker's translated voice came from his containment sphere. We do not understand. This distinction, what difference does it make? Morrison smiled in a way that made the aliens feel slightly uncomfortable. On Earth, humans have been hunting dangerous animals for hundreds of thousands of years. We know how to track them, trap them, and kill them. We know how to use their own instincts against them. Dr. Clark's eyes lit up with understanding. Captain, you're thinking about biological warfare. Not exactly, Morrison replied. I'm thinking about something simpler. These creatures are predators. They hunt in packs, they communicate with each other, and they probably have a hierarchy. If we can identify the alpha creatures and take them out, the rest might become confused. Or retreat. Major Frank Turner, who had led the boarding parties in the previous battle, nodded enthusiastically. I've been inside those things. They have what looks like a central nervous system running through the whole ship. Cut that in the right place and the whole creature dies instantly. Admiral Martinez made his decision. All right, we'll try a new approach. Helen, I want you to take the Resilience and 2 escort ships on a scouting mission. Get close enough to identify which creatures are giving orders to the others. Captain Burke felt her heart rate increase. It was a dangerous mission, but exactly the kind of challenge she loved. Understood, Admiral. How close do you want us to get? Close enough to see the whites of their eyes, Martinez said, then paused. Do they have eyes? Dr. Clark consulted his notes. They have light-sensitive organs along their hulls. Whether you'd call them eyes is debatable. 2 hours later, Captain Burke's small task force was moving carefully through the outer edges of the swarm fleet. The creatures seemed to be waiting for something, floating in space like sleeping whales. But Burke knew they were far from asleep. Her sensors showed massive energy buildups inside each creature. There, whispered Lieutenant Nina Wells, pointing. At her tactical display? That one in the center. It's about 30% larger than the others, and look at the communication patterns. Every chemical signal is either coming from it or going to it. Burke studied the creature through her ship's telescopes. It was definitely the leader, covered in what looked like scars from previous battles. Along its sides she could see dozens of smaller creatures attached like parasites or maybe babies. That's our target, she announced to her crew. But we need to get it away from the others. The plan they came up with was crazy enough that it might actually work. The 3 human ships would pretend to be damaged and retreating. With luck, the large creature would break away from the main group to pursue what looked like easy prey. Captain Ellen, king of the escort ship UES Determination, played her part perfectly. She vented atmosphere from her ship and shut down several engines, making it look like her vessel was badly damaged. The ruse worked better than they had hoped. The large swarm creature, along with 4 smaller ones, immediately broke formation and began chasing the apparently helpless human ships. As they moved away from the main swarm fleet, Captain Burke. Spring the trap. All ships, full power to engines. come about an attack formation delta. The three human ships suddenly turned and accelerated directly toward the surprised swarm creatures. But instead of using tungsten rounds, they fired Dr. Clark's new experimental ammunition. The bullets were hollow and filled with a cocktail of Earth's most deadly bacteria and viruses. The biological weapons wouldn't kill the creatures immediately, but they would make them very sick very quickly. More importantly, the infected creatures would spread the diseases to other swarm beings through their chemical communication system. The large creature tried to escape when it realized the trap, but it was too late. Multiple biological rounds hit its central mass, and within minutes it began showing signs of distress. Its movements became erratic, and the chemical signals it was sending to the other creatures became chaotic and contradictory. Captain Paul Green, monitoring the battle from his engineering station, watched with satisfaction as the smaller swarm creatures began to panic. Without clear orders from their leader, they started bumping into each other and firing randomly in all directions. "It's working," he reported to Captain Burke. "The alpha creature is losing control of its pack, but the humans weren't finished." Major Turner had prepared a special surprise for the large creature. Using shuttles modified with extra armor and engines, his teams approached the wounded Alpha from multiple directions. The shuttles weren't trying to dock with the creature. Instead, they were carrying the largest explosive charges the human fleet could manufacture. Nuclear warheads originally designed for destroying asteroids, now repurposed for hunting space monsters. "This is Turner," the Major's voice came through the communication system. "All charges planted. Recommend immediate withdrawal to safe distance." The three human ships accelerated away from the swarm creatures as fast as their engines could push. Behind them, the nuclear charges detonated in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from the main battle area. When the light faded, the large creature was gone. The smaller swarm beings floated in space, moving aimlessly without their leader's guidance. Some of them were already showing symptoms of the biological weapons, their dark surfaces developing strange colored patches that spread like infections. "Admiral Martinez's voice came through the fleet communication system. "Outstanding work. Burke, return to the main fleet. We've got a war to finish." As Captain Burke's ships rejoined the human fleet, she felt a deep satisfaction. The aliens had tried to fight the swarm like a conventional enemy, using advanced technology and careful strategy. The humans had treated them like what they really were, dangerous animals that needed to be hunted and killed. The difference in approach was everything. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the best way to solve a complex problem was with simple, brutal effectiveness. The creatures that had terrorized entire star systems were about to discover what happened when they encountered a species that had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill everything else. The real battle was about to begin. The final battle lasted 8 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the swarm fleet. When the last creature stopped moving and began drifting cold and dead through space, both human and alien crews cheered in exhaustion and relief. The war that had consumed 3 star systems and millions of lives was finally over. Admiral Martinez stood in the main hangar bay of the UES Liberty, watching as alien shuttles arrived to begin formal meetings with the human fleet. The hangar was enormous, built to hold dozens of human fighters and cargo ships. But today it would host the first official diplomatic gathering between humanity and the galaxy's other intelligent species. Captain Victoria Ross had spent the last 2 days preparing for this moment. As the fleet's diplomatic officer, she would be humanity's primary representative in these crucial first meetings. She had studied every piece of information they had about alien cultures, but she knew that nothing could truly prepare her for face-to-face contact with beings from other worlds. The first shuttle to land carried Admiral Kethver and a small group of Zephyrian officials. As they stepped out of their crystalline transport, Victoria was struck by how beautiful they were. The Zephyrians looked like living sculptures made of colored glass, with light flowing through their transparent bodies in patterns that seemed to shift with their emotions. "Captain Ross," Admiral Kethver said through his translation device, "we are honored to meet with the representatives of humanity. Your species has accomplished something that we believed impossible. Victoria smiled and extended her hand in the traditional human greeting. Kethver looked at her hand with confusion until she explained the gesture. When they shook hands, the alien's crystalline fingers felt cool and smooth like touching polished stone. "The honor is ours, Admiral," Victoria replied. "We're grateful for the chance to work together against a common enemy." The second shuttle brought Admiral Coral and her Nerian delegation. The fish-like aliens wore environmental suits filled with water, and they moved with flowing grace that reminded Victoria of dolphins. Their large black eyes seemed to see everything at once, and their scaled skin shimmered with colors that changed as they spoke. "Your warriors show no fear of death," Admiral Coral observed, her translated voice carrying notes of amazement. "In our culture, we spend great effort to avoid unnecessary risks, but your people actively seek dangerous situations. This is very difficult for us to understand." Chief Engineer Paul Green joined the conversation, wiping grease from his hands. After working on captured swarm technology, his practical, direct approach was very different from the aliens' formal diplomatic style. "It's not that we don't fear death," Paul explained. "It's that we fear failure more. On Earth, everything is dangerous. Our weather can kill us, our animals can kill us, even our plants can kill us. We learned a long time ago that sometimes you have to take big risks to survive." The third delegation came from the Vortani, the gas cloud species that lived in floating containers. Commander Gaswalker approached in his spherical containment unit, colored vapors swirling inside like a miniature storm system. "Your technology is primitive compared to ours," Gaswalker stated without any attempt at politeness. "Your ships are crude, your weapons are simple, and your computers are slow. Yet you defeated an enemy that had beaten our combined fleets for months. How is this possible?" Captain Ellen King, who had been listening to the conversation, stepped forward with a slight smile. "Maybe that's exactly why we won. You've all become so advanced that you forgot how to fight dirty. We never had that problem." The aliens looked puzzled by this explanation, so Victoria tried to clarify. "What Captain King means is that humans have never stopped being warriors. Even as we developed advanced technology, we continued to face physical challenges on our home world. We never became completely dependent on machines to solve our problems." Dr. Robert Clark approached the group carrying a tablet full of data about the swarm creatures. He had spent days analyzing their biology and technology, and his findings were fascinating. "The swarm wasn't actually as advanced as we first thought," Clark explained to the assembled aliens. "They were highly specialized but not very adaptable. They had evolved to fight enemies who used energy weapons and defensive shields. They had no experience with kinetic weapons or biological warfare." Admiral Kethver's light pattern shifted. To what Victoria was learning meant confusion among his people. "But we tried kinetic weapons early in the war. They were ineffective against swarm armor." "You tried small kinetic weapons," Clark corrected gently. "Particle accelerators firing. Microscopic projectiles. We used massive chunks of metal moving at relativistic speeds. The scale was completely different." Captain Sam Hughes, who served as cultural advisor for the human fleet, had been taking notes throughout the meeting. He was fascinated by the differences between human and alien approaches to problem solving. "It seems like your species all developed similar solutions to military challenges," Hughes observed. "Energy weapons, defensive shields, electronic warfare. But humans develop differently because we come from a more dangerous world." The conversations continued for hours as both sides shared information about their cultures, technologies, and histories. The aliens were amazed to learn that humans had spent most of their existence fighting each other, developing new weapons and tactics in constant warfare. The humans were equally surprised to learn that most galactic species had achieved peace within their own civilizations thousands of years before developing space travel. The concept of a species that continued fighting even after reaching the stars was almost incomprehensible to them. Ambassador Carol Wright arrived from Earth 3 days later aboard the fastest ship in the human fleet. She had been hastily appointed As humanity's first official representative to the galaxy, and she carried formal messages from Earth's government. The meeting with Ambassador Wright took place in the Liberty's main conference room, with representatives from all 4 species present. The room had been modified with special environmental controls to accommodate the different alien life forms. People of the galaxy, Wright began, reading from her prepared statement, humanity comes before you not as conquerors or as supplicants, but as neighbors. We answered your call for help because that's what neighbors do for each other. Admiral Coral leaned forward in her water-filled chair. Ambassador, your species has demonstrated military capabilities that exceed our own despite having much simpler technology. Many in the galaxy will fear what you might do with these abilities. Wright nodded thoughtfully. I understand those concerns, but I want to be very clear about something. Humans didn't develop these capabilities to threaten other species. We developed them because our world taught us that the universe is a dangerous place, and sometimes good people need to be able to fight evil. Captain Noah Adams, commanding the UES Determination, had been monitoring communications from across the galaxy. The news of humanity's victory over the swarm was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Ambassador, Adams reported, we're receiving messages from dozens of star systems. Word about the battle is traveling through the galactic communication networks. Everyone wants to know about the humans who defeated the swarm. The political implications were staggering. The Galactic Council, which had governed interstellar relations for thousands of years, suddenly had to deal with a completely unknown species that had appeared from nowhere and changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Some species were calling for immediate alliance with humanity. Others were demanding that the humans be contained or controlled. A few were even suggesting that humanity might be more dangerous than the swarm had ever been. What happens now? Asked Commander Gaswalker Wright. Looked around the room at the assembled aliens and humans. Now we learn to work together. The swarm may be defeated, but I suspect there are other threats out there. The galaxy is a big place, and we're all going to need each other. Captain Jake Morrison, who had started this whole adventure by answering a distress call, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not through conquest or diplomacy, but by simply doing what was right when others needed help. The age of human isolation was ending, but the age of human responsibility in the galaxy was just beginning. Whether the other species would welcome that responsibility or fear it remained to be seen. 6 months after the victory over the swarm, Captain Ben Foster stood on the observation deck of Concordia Station, the galaxy's most important diplomatic facility. Through the massive transparent aluminum windows, he could see ships from dozens of different species coming and going from the station's docking bays. Some were familiar now, like the crystal ships of the Zephyrians and the flowing organic vessels of the Nereians. Others were completely new to him. Foster had been chosen as humanity's first permanent ambassador to the Galactic Council, a job he never expected to have when he started his career as a simple cargo ship pilot. The galaxy was much bigger and more complicated than anyone on Earth had imagined. The news of humanity's victory over the swarm had traveled to every corner of known space. Within weeks, representatives from hundreds of different species had arrived at Concordia Station, all wanting to meet the mysterious Deathworlders who had solved an impossible problem. Some came seeking alliance and friendship. Others came to judge whether humanity posed a threat to galactic peace. A few came simply out of curiosity, wanting to study the strange new species that fought so differently from everyone else. Ambassador Carol Wright walked up beside Foster, carrying a tablet full of reports from Earth. The latest batch of requests, she said with a tired smile. 17 species want formal trade agreements. 12 want military cooperation pacts, and 3 want to hire human mercenaries to solve their own security problems. Foster shook his head in amazement. 6 months ago, nobody in the galaxy had ever heard of humans. Now they think we're some kind of super soldiers for hire. Can you blame them? Wright asked. Look at what we accomplished. A problem that had the entire galaxy terrified was solved in less than a week once we arrived. The political situation was complex and sometimes tense. The Galactic Council had been forced to completely restructure itself to accommodate humanity's unexpected arrival. For thousands of years, the Council had operated on the assumption that all spacefaring species would develop along similar lines. Humanity shattered that assumption. Captain Ashley Roberts, now serving as intelligence officer for the human embassy, joined them at the observation window. "We've got 3 more species requesting emergency assistance," she reported. "Pirates. In the Rigel sector, some kind of plague in the Vega system, and a civil war near the galactic core." "What does Earth Command say?" Foster asked. "President Garcia is being careful," Roberts replied. "She doesn't want us to become the galaxy's police force, but she also knows we can't ignore every cry for help. It's a delicate balance." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Kethver, who had become one of humanity's strongest supporters in the Council. The Zephyrian's crystal body glowed with the warm colors that indicated friendship among his people. "Ambassador Foster," Kethver said through his translation device, "the Council session is about to begin. Today's debate concerns the proposal to create a joint defense force with human participation." Foster nodded and gathered his materials. The debate had been going on for weeks, with various species arguing about whether to formally invite humanity to help defend the galaxy against future threats. The proposal was popular among species that had been victims of the swarm, but it made others nervous. The council chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate representatives from species with vastly different environmental needs. Foster took his place at the human delegation's assigned position, between the aquatic Nerians and the gas cloud Vortani. Chancellor Brightwind of the Stellar Commonwealth called the session to order. The Commonwealth was one of the galaxy's oldest and most conservative governments, and they had been among the most skeptical about humanity's intentions. "We gather today to discuss Proposal 7749H, Chancellor Brightwind announced, the formation of a joint defense force incorporating human military doctrine and personnel. The floor recognizes Senator Deepcurrent of the Nerian Republic." Senator Deepcurrent rose from her water-filled chair, her scaled skin shimmering with nervous colors. "Honored colleagues, we have all seen what human weapons can accomplish. But we must ask ourselves, do we want to change the fundamental nature of galactic civilization? For 10,000 years, we have sought to resolve conflicts through negotiation and compromise. Are we now to abandon that tradition in favor of violence?" Murmurs of agreement came from several delegations, but Foster also noticed many representatives who looked uncomfortable with the senator's words. The Swarm War had taught everyone that some problems couldn't be solved with diplomacy. Representative Stonesinger of the Zephyrian Federation requested permission to speak. "Senator Deepcurrent speaks of our tradition of peace," she said, her crystal body glowing with bright blue light. "But where was that peace when the swarm consumed the outer colonies? Where was our tradition of compromise when entire star systems were devoured? Sometimes, honored colleagues, peace must be defended with strength." The debate continued for hours, with species arguing about the nature of civilization, the role of military force, and humanity's place in the galaxy. Foster listened carefully, taking notes and trying to understand the complex political dynamics at play. Finally, Chancellor Brightwind called for the human representative to speak. Foster stood up, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes focused on him. His words here could determine humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. "Honored members of the Council," Foster began, "I want to address the concerns that have been raised about human involvement in galactic defense. Some of you fear that we will bring violence and chaos to your peaceful civilization. I understand those fears, but I believe they are based on a misunderstanding of who we are." He paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled aliens. "Humans are not warriors because we love violence. We are warriors because we love peace. And we understand that peace sometimes requires people willing to fight for it. We didn't develop our military capabilities to conquer others. We developed them to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Senator Deepcurrent interrupted with a question. "But how can we trust that human military power will not be used?" For conquest? Your species has a history of warfare among yourselves. Foster nodded, having expected this question. You're right that humans have fought many wars. But those wars taught us something important. The cost of conflict is always higher than the cost of cooperation. We learned to work together not because we became peaceful, but because we realized that working together makes us all stronger. Captain Sam Hughes, now serving as cultural attaché, provided additional context. The same instincts that made humans effective against the swarm also make us effective protectors. We don't fight because we enjoy it. We fight because someone has to, and we're good at it. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than Foster had hoped but sufficient to pass the proposal. The Joint Defense Force would be established, with human advisors helping to train and equip a new generation of galactic peacekeepers. The council session ended. Foster felt both pride and responsibility. Humanity had officially become part of the galactic community, but that membership came with obligations and expectations that would challenge them for generations to come. Admiral Tony Martinez, now serving as military liaison between Earth and the Council, approached Foster with a new message from home. Orders from Earth Command, Martinez said. We've got reports of swarm survivors in the Tau Ceti system. They want a joint human-alien task force to investigate. Foster smiled grimly. The work was just beginning. Humanity had found its place among the stars as protectors and defenders, but the galaxy was a dangerous place with many threats yet to be discovered. As he prepared for the next mission, Foster looked out at the stars through the station's windows. Somewhere out there, new challenges waited. But for the first time in galactic history, those challenges would be met by species working together, combining alien wisdom with human determination. The age of isolation was over for everyone. The age of cooperation had begun, built on the foundation of mutual respect and shared purpose. Whether it would last depended on whether all the galaxy's species could learn to trust each other as much as they had learned to trust the humans who had answered their call for help. The future was uncertain, but it was bright with possibility.